Alright, starting in on repotting this juniper. So I just like to start by picking away some of this dead stuff because it'll just spike you. Some of these junipers are a little spikier than others. This is where you really got to start to get to see the base of the trunk. See what you're working with. It's kind of like digging for gold or something. Just get a good thrill out of this part. So you can loosen it up a bit. You don't want to damage much of the roots. You're going to want to have a nice sprayer with you to keep the roots really moist. So you can just pull it out here. I always like to kind of inspect the roots. So you can see some of these nice live roots here are coming out. There's quite a few bugs in there, which big ants. That's not good. So that'll be nice to get rid of those guys in there. And then how I like to start is you just take your chopstick and work from the top. Just these fine
motions. You don't want to damage any of the roots as much as you can avoid it. Some people use the pick. They have this pick that they'll use, and I see them and it seems so harsh on the roots. But you know, people are braver than me when they do this process. It's pretty dense in there, pretty dense, which is good in some ways. It means the roots are really strong and taken. But a lot of this top stuff will just come right off. Again, try not to rip the roots when you're coming out. So small, not long dragons, but just little small ones. If you start up here, the base, versus here, it'll just pull because they'll be attached and it'll pull the ends of them. So you kind of start at the top, work your way back. So I picked out a pot. I've got my screen in here and my screen over here and little wires to hold in the roots. It's really important that you wire down the tree so the roots don't jiggle, especially at the start while the roots are setting. Here's a look at the tree. Now that I've gotten all the roots out, you can really start to see the stalk, whereas before you couldn't. Now I had a really tough time trying to decide how to pot this tree. Now you have this branch that sticks right out, coming down, back down, which just creates a horrible curve. Let's see over here. I like the little movement on this branch, which is nice. So what I've ended up deciding is that I'm gonna pot it in this way here, and what I'll do is I'll curve this one branch up and around to make it look kind of. See, I've got this foliage, got this branches and stuff right here to kind of hide this really bad curve. Another not so nice thing about this tree is that it's got a real bad reverse taper. So when I pull down, this often happens, pull down the soil quite a bit. You know, well, only about an inch or so, but you can really see that the really fattened out there. So you get the reverse taper, which makes the tree look a lot younger. You can take out there's a few little roots that kind of came off here. I noticed they're real small. You can kind of chop those off, so don't be afraid to do that. But like I said, I'm going to use this part here to kind of hide this thing, and I'm going to tilt it and then curve it around a bit to kind of look like, so you don't see that, and it'll look like, hopefully it'll look like the whole tree is curved, but. So here's the finished product. Took me 2 hours of wiring last night. I thought I'd get it done a lot quicker, make it very easy, but the branches, as you know, they stuck right straight out, and so I really spent a lot of time wiring it up.
this branch is wired, 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 this branch is wired. Basically all the major, well, pretty much all the branches are wired. Some of the secondary branches. Give you a nice turn around, see some of the angles. Now, as you can see, I've left a lot of the needles on there. I really want to make sure the tree lives. You know, one of the concepts I kind of had, and you can see it so well, but this is kind of almost like a snake that comes down. I thought, oh, I could trim this all back and make it deadwood. And I got some lime sulfur, so I've never tried using it, so you could make that all lime sulfur and have it kind of like a snake coming into the nest. I thought I'd call it the snake in the nest. You can only see it so much without that happening, but this was just too green. I think I might let it harden up. I mean, this is all new growth this year, right back to here. If it was old secondary growth, I'd probably do it. So I'll probably let this grow for a year. It'll kind of grow in there, and I'll then cut it all back, skin it all, and make it look like a snake kind of weaving in. So snake in the nest is what I'm thinking of calling it. Let's take you deep into the bonsai here. Look at the base. There's this reverse taper problem that I had, so I've kind of tried to hide that with this branch coming in. Takes away from the trunk and brings you up, so you don't get the movement of the trunk. Your eye doesn't necessarily follow that. Sort of unconventional. Now, one of the problems I had was that you can see right here and here, basically the tree went up and then forked left and right, basically as flat as you could imagine. And so I bent this one up quite a bit. I used some quite heavy wire in here, and I bent it just as much as I could possibly bend it straight up to try to get rid of this sort of flat squared top. But again, it really takes away from the beauty of the trunk and the age of the tree. So that's why I've done quite extensive wiring to sort of hide that fact and not actually highlight that part of the tree, and work more at looking at the top and looking at the angle of the branches that kind of come out and carries your eye there. Now again, I think for me it's a bit, it needs to be trimmed up. Could take off a lot of the brush. I even thought about taking off a lot of this stuff here to make it look more like a snake and leave the kind of tip or something, but I want it to live. I really want it to live, so I want to, I'm not quite brave enough to just start taking off too much of the needles. But again, you can see I've just done quite extensive wiring down here. Hopefully this gives people inspiration and gives people ideas of what they can do with a cheap juniper that they buy just from the store, from the nursery. Get it in a pot, be creative. I had tons of fun wiring. Like I said, I got into the zone, and a couple hours later is late at night, and so then I finished up wiring this morning, and that's what, during late at night is where I have these great ideas. And I thought, oh, I could call it the snake in the nest and make it a snake in the nest, because I was thinking about the tree. The image just came.